Hey, I want to tell you guys the story of how the church first started. Not New Break Church, the church. How the whole idea of church first began. I find a fascinating story. I'll tell you just a little piece of it. You can read about it in the book of Acts. Actually, in the New Testament, right after the Gospels, the story of Jesus is really the story of Acts. I hope somebody makes a movie about it soon, too, because it's really good. In Acts chapter 1 through 4, kind of see what happens. Some kind of crazy stuff happens. Chapter 1, some kind of funny stuff. Then we see the Apostle Peter. So last time I heard from Peter, he was busy, denying Jesus in the garden, denying that he even knows him, and then feeling terrible about it, weeping, just the sad. It feels like, way to go, dude. You blew it in your life. Maybe you felt that. You blew your chance with God, and then you denied him, and now it's over. Well, now we see him in Acts chapter 2, and he stands up to preach his sermon. Now all of a sudden he's confident. God kind of restored him, and he's confident about God again. Preached this incredible sermon. I won't tell you what's all in it, but you can read it. The whole thing's there in Acts chapter 2. Preached this sermon, and then right afterwards it says 3,000 people decided to follow Jesus that day. Now, I hope that I've given some at least halfway decent sermons sometimes in my life. I've never had 3,000 people all at once decide they're going to follow Jesus, which would be pretty cool because I'm a pastor, so I geek out about that stuff. So I think that'd be cool. But 3,000 people decide to follow Jesus and get baptized. That'd be pretty fun, right? That's a lot, man. They're just going into the Sea of Galilee there and just going down and back up. We're not going to quite baptize 3,000 people at the event that we're doing, but you will get like a glimpse. We get to kind of reenact that part of the early church of watching like a whole bunch of people at once, which is pretty cool. So the question is, what do you do if all of a sudden like 3,000 people all of a sudden sort of join your community at once? That's what we pastors call like a good problem to have. And it is a good problem to have, but it's also something you need to solve. I always wonder, like, did they have to deal with parking issues? Because that's like a whole lot of people all of a sudden come one place at once. What would we do here if 3,000 people decided to all of a sudden come? I don't know if we can quite fit like a second level here, like little balcony. You'd be pretty close to the ceiling, I think. I guess a bunch of people would just sit in the courtyard and all over. We'd open up all the doors. I don't know, so they had to figure out what to do. And it's all these people, all different backgrounds. They don't know how, they don't know the way things work. And how do you get any sense of unity or community? Well, we read at the end of Acts chapter 2, it's like one of my favorite descriptions of the church. It's actually what I've tried to model us, what we do after. So you can go look at the blueprint of it right there in Acts 2. It says this, they met together in the temple courts. That's what we do now. They met together in people's homes. That's what we do all week long at different life groups. It says they ate together. It says that a couple times. That's why we like to eat together. We got food, all the stuff we do. A lot of community happens around food. It says they prayed together, so we do that. They studied the Word of God together. They were super generous together. It says they actually shared everything they had. It'd be like, you don't have a lawnmower? You can borrow mine, right? You need some sugar, you need whatever. So they're all super generous. And it was just this beautiful picture of just a community, just forming out of strangers. But still, that's not enough. I mean, just because you do stuff together, how do you really kind of get, unity? How do you get everyone kind of moving in the same direction? Well, we read in Acts chapter 4, the description of the church continues. It says again, they all met together, they all had this together, but it adds this line. It says, and they were all of one heart and one mind. They were all unified, one heart and one mind. Some translations say they were all of one accord. And so that's why some people would say that Honda was the official car of the early church because all the believers were in one accord. That's what people said, but that was bad. I'll save that for next week. Dad jokes, I guess, cheesy pastor jokes. So they're all one accord. They had all this incredible unity. And listen, this unity was a big deal because these are groups of people that don't normally hang out, all right? So this was like, it was men and women worshiping alongside each other. Sadly, that actually wasn't very common. It was Jews and non-Jews, and we'll talk about in a little bit why that was a big deal, all right? Then, picture it was even like slave owners and people that were in slavery, like worship alongside each other. It was like, all these groups you'd never expect. There were like cat owners and dog owners worshiping together, which would be like a big deal in OB, and it was for them. And like Raiders fans and Chargers fans, and they're side by side. There was even country music fans and punk rock fans, like worshiping together. There were people that love Target and people that hate Target, and they were actually worshiping together. That's an inside joke if you live in OB. But so I'm glad. Thanks for appreciating it. Okay, so all these different groups, I may have made up a couple of them, but most of all those different groups were all together. How in the world was that possible? Because listen, 2018, we've made a lot of progress since then. I don't know if we've made any progress when it comes to unity. I mean, have we? Are there any less divisions in our world, either in the church, outside of it, in 2018 as back then? I don't know if we've gotten any better. Maybe we've gotten worse. Who am I to say? I don't know, right? I just know just divisions everywhere, right? In our world, Middle East, divisions in the United States. Heck, there's people debating so many issues all over San Diego. We can't all agree on stuff. In OB, beautiful community, a lot of divisions. If you don't believe me, just jump on any of the OB Facebook groups any day. I'll warn you, but you can get on and get a glimpse of it. So lots of division, man. How did they achieve unity? Well, I think later in Acts 4, it gives us the key. It says, the grace of God was powerfully at work in them all. I've never understood that the idea of grace actually leads to the idea of unity. Someone told me that today. They said, I've never understood that before, so I guess I explained it okay, so that's good for you, right? But grace can actually tie into this idea of unity. We've been talking a lot about grace. I know you hear that word in church a lot, but we're trying to add a lot of depth of understanding to it. Here's a quote I haven't shared with you yet. If you read anything by Anne Lamott, she's funny, great Christian author. She says this, and I can totally relate. She says, I do not at all understand the whole mystery of grace, but only that it meets us where it meets us where we are, but it does not leave us where it found us. I don't know about you. I would say, yep, that describes how I feel about grace. I've shared before, I think, when I first started following Jesus, I understood about this much of grace, and then it's kind of slowly grown, and now I'm understanding grace more and more. But I hope through the rest of my Christian life, I'm ever deepening my understanding of grace. And I know this, it doesn't leave us where it found us. At least it wasn't meant to. Maybe you say, I don't know, I've heard about grace. Honestly, it doesn't make that big of a difference in my life. But it was meant to. It still can, if you're open to it. Grace was meant to change everything. It was meant to make a giant difference in so many different ways in our lives. We've talked about those, and we'll continue to speak about them. We'll always be about grace. And one of the powerful things that grace does is it moves all of us from being outsiders to being insiders, all right? And I don't know if you've ever felt like an outsider at any point in your life. I won't make you raise your hand, but because then you might feel like one if you didn't. No, I don't know if you've ever felt like an outsider. If you're someone who never has, just be honest with you, the rest of us are kind of jealous of you right now. We're a little frustrated. We might pray for God's humbling to come into your life. No, just kidding. But I assume most of us have maybe felt like an outsider at some point. I definitely have many times in my life. I think about it in high school. Man, my first couple years, I was just kind of doing it solo in a big public high school. Kind of didn't really know anybody. I finally found a great group of friends. I became a choir geek and a drama nerd. I totally got them both. I loved it, man. Just such an awesome community of people. And so we do everything together and got to be in a lot of the plays with them. And it's cool now to think God was probably using that to prep me for what part of my future career would be. Little did I know. But I love being in that community of people. And so all of us would try out for every play together, which was cool. Then, of course, it's not enough to do choir and drama. You got to also be in show choir. That's like the next step. So we all try out for show choir together. Everybody made it into show choir. Well, everybody but me. You can feel bad for me. It's okay. I know you're probably shocked. You're like, well, geez, Carl, we just assumed you're just an incredible dancer. And that's a really good assumption, actually. But surprisingly, I'm just not at all. I thought my jazz hands were enough to carry me through, I guess, but I guess they're not. I guess you also have to be able to dance. So all my other friends traveled to all the show choir competitions, and I was kind of back home, including my girlfriend at the time. So, of course, she made it. So I felt kind of an outsider then. Then they all tried out for, like, all-state choir, like the best of the best. And, yeah, I definitely didn't really make that either. They just kind of let me be in the general choir. So I definitely felt, even though it's like a good group of friends, I just remember, man, just lots of events, lots of times where they'd be gone for the whole weekend and just kind of feeling like an outsider. So I don't know if you've ever felt that at any time, but listen, a big part of what grace does, we don't always know this, grace actually is meant to help everyone feel like insiders. Everyone belongs somewhere, be a part of something. I shared last week the story, Jesus' famous story told of the prodigal son. And you can watch that message on our Facebook page. But he talked about this. And basically, he describes grace as a father who's always standing with open arms to anybody, no matter how outsider we've ever felt. And he always just welcomes us back. He always welcomes us back home. That's why we like the idea of welcome home, is that grace is described as home, as a place to belong. that everyone gets to be insiders. That's what Apostle Paul is talking about in Ephesians chapter 2. We've been working our way through the book of Ephesians this year here at this church. Just thought it'd be cool to kind of dive deep into that. We've been bringing in some other stuff, and we'll do something different for Father's Day next week. But we've been working our way, and Paul talks a ton about grace. Here's what's meant to be in your life. But now, all right, we're going to get practical with grace. Here's how grace can help you with unity. And again, we need that in 2018 as much as ever. And there's, always two sides every story. So the first side with grace is understanding like our need for it. Again, we talked a little bit last week, our need. But here in Ephesians 2, Paul he says, listen, you were all outsiders at one point. When it comes to God, all of us were outsiders. He says, verse 11 and 12 says, none of you knew the ways of God. You didn't understand what God was about. You didn't understand what Jesus was about, he says. And some of you can really relate. Say, yeah, actually, I still kind of feel like that. And we love that. We love that we always have people that are kind of brand new to the whole thing. You say, yeah, like actually I feel like I don't know that much about God and what he's up to in our world. And some of you might say, I don't know, Carl, like I've been in church as long as I can remember. And we love having those people here as well. But it's about all of us understanding that, at some point we were all outsiders when it comes to God. And Paul wants us, we got to begin there with grace, or else we're never going to get this unity thing. So I got to understand myself as an outsider. And then he goes on and says, you who were once out of it altogether, now we're all in on everything. Because grace takes us from all outsiders to be insiders. Grace reminds us we have this place to belong. Listen, I don't know of any other shared need between all human beings everywhere on the planet, outside of food and water and shelter, than the need to belong. I just believe humans everywhere, we just want to belong. We just need to belong. We need to be connected to something and belong somewhere. And grace gives us that. Grace says no matter how outside you've been, you get a place to belong. Now, we live in 2018, so you would think that belonging to places is as easy as ever now. Maybe it's the easiest people have ever had it because of technology. Social media keeps people connected. There's all sorts of groups you can join, all sorts of Facebook groups on everything. There's places like meetup.com that has interest groups for almost any interest that you have. I go to one that's a group of people that play beach volleyball and just made a lot of new friends kind of outside of the church through there. So all sorts of ways you can belong. And believe it or not, there's literally just groups for anything and everything. Even if you felt like I'm the only person that feels like this, you could get online and find there's a whole other group of people. Like, if you're super into yodeling, and I know that's a whole bunch of people here, like if you're really into that, there are groups for you to connect. There's even groups for Western yodeling and Alpine yodeling, because that's a big difference. You talk about divisions, man. Don't get those two people in the same room. Just kidding, I have no idea. But, and now you add in the third kind of yodeling, of course. Walmart yodeling is kind of the other one. And, oh man, we don't have a very social media savvy crowd. Few people knew that? All right, that's fine. But, right, there's a group, I didn't know this, there's a group called the Roadkill group, believe it or not. And it's a group of people that are committed to the proper retrieval and burial of animals. That's true. I'm just saying. I don't know. It's a real thing. So you can literally belong to like any kind of thing you want to belong to. So it may be easier nowadays than ever. Maybe not. Someone told me after the first service, they're like, you would think so, but it also feels like maybe one of the loneliest times to be alive, right? Kind of ironically. But grace says, hey, everyone gets to belong. God gives us a place. Again, it's not just a religion. It's not just a set of doctrine that you sign up for. Grace says you belong in this family now, in this community. And so that's the power of what grace says. That's what we say. That's what's so amazing about grace. All right, and I hope that you get that. If you hang around here at New Break, I hope that you'll always feel that sense of that you guys have a place to belong with a bunch of other outsiders. And we all get a place to belong. But that's only one side of the story, all right? We can't stop there. I'm going to be honest, a lot of Christians stop there. We say grace is awesome, it's amazing for me. Now I get a place to belong. It just stops. If it stops there, by the way, then it feels like grace is just going to kind of end with us. You know, I've heard the saying before, and it's always kind of like a wow statement to me. But if you think about it, you know, Christianity itself is only ever one generation away from total extinction. if everyone just keeps grace to themselves. And so the other side of the story with grace is once we have become insiders, now we're meant to share grace. We're meant to invite other people into the story. We're meant to not just hold grace to ourselves, but share outside of our walls and share outside of just our lives, because God meant to invite everyone in the family, that everyone, all outsiders get to come inside. And that's part of what Paul writes about next in Ephesians 2. And I'm going to be honest, this is one of those passages of the Bible that if I read, when I used to read it for a long time in my life, I would read it and I'd get done and just be like, yeah, I'm really confused. I did not get that at all. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. Like, I don't understand that, because Paul's talking about, he talks about the Jews and then the Gentiles. And I'm like, I think I'm supposed to know what those words mean. And then sometimes he calls them the circumcised and the uncircumcised. Imagine if that's how we were known by each other. Imagine if your name tag at church said, here's my name, and then the little box, I am either circumcised or uncircumcised. I just think that would be kind of awkward at church, I'm just saying. But that's what they used to do. I got so many circumcision jokes, but let's just move on. It's better for my health and probably better for your time, but we'll just move on. So, I'm just saying it's in there. We're going to read it in the Message translation today, so it's a little bit different language, but you'll see it in there and some of the others. But listen, here's the best way I can think of to explain it. The whole idea, like, why is it a big deal? Jews and Gentiles, or Jews and non-Jews, and that's a big discussion. But let me give you just like the 1-minute explanation. Like the metaphor that I hope makes it super simple for us is the Jews, ever since the beginning of the Old Testament, beginning of time, they were always like the chosen people of God. They're the ones who know who God is. They know the Bible, in their case, the Old Testament. They know everything, they're believers in God. And so let's picture that as being those of us, because we have a mix in our room, people that just grew up in the church. You went to church, your parents did, so you kind of know how to act in church. You've heard some of the songs. When someone says, turn to the story of the prodigal son, you're like, yeah, I know that one. I've heard that. I know David and Goliath, right? So you kind of know the ways of God. I mean, whether you believed in it or not, but you're at least really familiar. Then the non-Jews, the Gentiles, they were people, they knew nothing about God. They don't know Old Testament story, never heard of Moses. They don't know any of the ways of God. We also have a mix of those people in the room. I love having both kinds. Whole lot of people. And by the way, that's really common in the upcoming generation. The people before you, you could just assume that in America, kind of everybody grew up in the church. And that's super, super not common now. So a whole lot of people grow up and just say, when you say Carter Turner book of Ephesians, like I don't even know what that is, right? I know nothing about the Bible, nothing about God. And so that was kind of like Jews and non-Jews, God's people, and then people like outsiders is how they were viewed. And Paul says that's not how it's meant to be. Jesus actually came to bring both of those together. So here's how he says it, this beautiful stuff on unity. He says out of the Message, verse 14, the Messiah has made things up between us so that we're now together on this, both the non-Jewish outsiders and the Jewish insiders. He tore down the wall that we used to keep each other at a distance. Instead of continuing with two groups of people separated by centuries of animosity and suspicion, he created a new kind of human being, a fresh start for everybody. He came and just leveled the playing field for everybody. How? It says Jesus brought us together through his death on the cross. The cross got us to embrace each other, and that was the end of hostility, he says. We know that it hasn't ended all hostility, but it was meant to. Christ came and preached to you outsiders. He preached peace. He preached it to us insiders. He treated us all as equals. He made us equals. Through him, we both share the same spirit. We have equal access to the Father. Here's what that means for you, by the way. It's because I met people that I know, like maybe we're never around church, never around the Bible. They just think, yeah, other people know that stuff better than me. Like, I don't think God listens to my prayers as much as he does those people. And listen, that's not true. Paul just says we all have equal access to God, all right? Whatever your spiritual background was, when you come to him, we all get equal access. Same God, he says, same Holy Spirit. Then he says, you are no longer strangers or outsiders. I love this phrase. He says, you belong here. You belong here. I would say that every week to you, here. You belong here, he says, with as much right to the name Christian as anyone. He says the more that we understand, like the more I get my need for grace, that I'm an outsider, again, whether I have a super church background or not, I think the people that don't have one have an advantage because you can already kind of get that. But if you had a super church background, it's understanding like I'm an outsider to God. And if I am and I get how much I needed grace, then that helps me push past my judgmentalism, divisiveness over everybody else. And instead of have division, I can learn to kind of embrace the diversity, right? And kind of welcoming everybody in. Because listen, us Christians get kind of weird sometimes with like Amazing Grace. We like to sing that song, but I don't think we really like the point of that song, the truth behind it, you know? Amazing Grace, well, sort of. I mean, it's amazing for me. I don't know about for you, right? Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Until I hear you singing off key next to me. Then I don't really like that. That's not such a sweet sound. When my neighbors are making noise late at night, I forget about grace. There's no more sweet sound there, right? And I sort of forget it. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Yeah, I hope this guy finds some deodorant next to me. It would be nice if he finds that, right? I hope these people can just get up and find a job. We forget about grace. Saved a wretch like me. Well, I mean, I'm only kind of wretch-ish. I mean, I didn't need that much saving. You know, I got like a little bit of wretch. But yeah, those wretches, I mean, they definitely need amazing grace, right? And we just miss the other side of the story. You know, Amazing Grace was written by a guy, believe it or not, he was a slave trader. And fortunately, you know, kind of encountered God and just felt incredible just shame and remorse, repentance. Like, I can't believe I used to treat human beings like this. And God just gets a hold of his heart, just changes him, becomes a pastor, and he writes Amazing Grace. So when he wrote Saved a Wretch Like Me, I mean, he feels that word, right? I mean, he gets that. Do I feel that when I say those words? Because if I don't, it's going to be hard to ever have unity, because I'll always be like, well, we got the saints, and then we got like the sinners, right? And the saints kind of have it figured out, and then those sinners. And that's not unity. But when we live out this kind of unity through grace, man, it's so powerful. Listen, Acts chapter 2, it ends with this verse. I love this. So remember, all these people, they're eating together, they're hanging out together. It says, and God added to their number every single day those who were being saved. So imagine this, a church that grows daily. But here's what I find fascinating. They had no buildings. They had no marketing, no slick graphics, no great videos, no social media online presence, no great website. How did they grow every day? Because they were this beautiful community of unity. And I think people back then said exactly what they would say in 2018. They would see that and say, I want a piece of that. I want a piece of that. I don't have that kind of belonging in my life. You know, I got my coworkers who may or may not get along, my neighbors maybe, family members maybe. I want to really belong to something. And so people were just drawn in by that. That's the power of when we actually, you know, push past kind of division and kind of the us and them and kind of bring everybody in. I wanted to find a powerful kind of visual of that for you. So see what you think of this. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I actually was going to do that demonstration live for you, but I try to not show off, really. I'm trying to kind of keep some humility. So Mason said I should just find someone wasn't quite as good as what I can do, but I wanted you to see it. No, I love that picture though, right? And thank you, Android phones. I don't own one and don't get paid to show their commercials, but I love their slogan, right? Be together, but not the same. Be together, not the same. That's what that Acts 2 church was. They were so tight together, but they weren't the same, right? They don't leave their diversity and differences at the door. They actually brought them together, and that's what Paul says. We bring the groups together. That's what Jesus did. He kind of tears down the walls, right, and really brings people together. And that's what church is meant to look like. And it is a beautiful picture of that. We're getting there. We're a little bit of a picture of that. You're worshiping right now. You don't even know it. Alongside people that, believe it or not, don't tell anyone, they voted differently than you. I know. It's weird, right? They voted different than you. Some people in here make a lot more than you and make a lot less than you. And there's people in here who actually raise their kids really different than you and listen to different kinds of music than you. I've heard some people say, Sunday morning is meant to be the least segregated hour of the week. And it is meant to be that. We're getting there. We're getting there as a country, and we're meant to lead the way. Racial reconciliation, gender equality, right? That it's meant to be this beautiful kind of picture. And again, not the same, right? Be together, but not the same. Because there's real power, like we see with the piano, this idea of, when you bring all the different parts and let them kind of be their parts, but then bring them together around a common purpose, makes beautiful music, right? Versus the other kind of the piano. That's what's really powerful with this Acts church. All these different people, and they all got different strengths, but they come together. It says later in Acts, these people turned the world upside down. Because that's really like the power of that. That's the difference, by the way, of us uniting around God, around grace, is that we're not just like the groups I shared earlier. We're not just an online group that has a shared interest. We all just share an interest in the Bible. We all just share an interest in sitting together in a building, on Sundays. We have kind of a shared interest. No, it's that we actually meant to have, a shared experience of grace, but a shared mission, shared purpose. We're not just community, we're community with a mission. There's a great word for that I learned a few years ago. It's called communitas. Love that word. Say that, communitas. Right? You just feel smart saying it. It feels so Latin, right? It's communitas. It's community with a mission. So when you bring everyone together around mission, then we can carry out God's mission that Jesus taught us how to pray. Again, some of us don't know this prayer, and some grew up having to memorize it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, that one. He says, thy kingdom come, your will be done here on earth like it is in heaven. That's the mission God is up to. We're never going to totally see heaven on earth because it's broken here and we have sin kind of flowing through it all. But we're meant to give people glimpses of this is what heaven looks like. So we get to bring his kingdom come here on earth as it is in heaven. I've shared before, I kind of modified that prayer. You're allowed to do that. It's okay. You can actually pray the words that you want to pray. You can pour out yourself to God. So I kind of modify the words and I pray, God, thy kingdom come, your will be done here in Ocean Beach like it is in heaven. And I pray, God, your will be done in San Diego as it is in heaven. Your will be done at your workplace and in your apartment complex, your neighborhood, like it is in heaven. And you know what it looks like in heaven? It looks like unity, grace, generosity, lots of other things. So we give people a glimpse. Thy will be done here like it is in heaven when you bring together the diversity of gifts. Like we got to do, shared a little bit last week, but over Memorial Day weekend, every year we brings people down from here, build a home for a family in need. It was this beautiful family with their sons having some breathing problems. He needed to get into a safe home. So we got to build it from scratch, in 2.5 days. But part of how we did that, we brought together this diversity of people. It was the most people we brought from OB anyway. We had like 21 of us. And literally, we were age 5 to 65. No power tools, all just using hand tools. And actually, most of us didn't really know each other that well. So I had a few friends there, but it was fun to get to know some other people from here I didn't know well. Had some college students, some retired people, kind of single, married, divorced, kind of everything in between, all different income levels. You come around this shared mission, and then you build a house 2.5 days, right? So you share, we brought a little bit of the kingdom of God, because this is what it looks like as people are cared for in God's kingdom. So we bring that here on earth, here in Tijuana as it is in heaven, all right? And so that family experiences some grace. We did as we worked together. Now friendships were formed. Now they hang with each other here at church. They didn't know each other beforehand. Even spreads beyond that. One of the young guys who came said, man, I went back, Carter, told my friends, who you may call outsiders. They don't know anything about church, aren't interested in God. Told them all that he did, and they're all saying, I want to come with you next year on that. In fact, like, is there something we can give right now to the family? We just want to go help them. See, that's what grace does. And guess what? They're invited to do it. They can absolutely come and join us to do that. So that's the power, is grace lets us bring the kingdom here. Grace helps us to actually be the church. That's how we like to say it at New Break. We don't just go to church. We actually get to be the church. There's some churches have this. I think it's such a cool idea. Hanging right over the exit doors as you exit church has this little sign above it that says, the church has left the building. And I love that reminder, right? The church has left the building because God doesn't just dwell in here. Well, here's what Paul says about buildings. I know a lot of times people think of church, they instantly picture buildings. And we got a lot of them. You can drive down Sunset Cliffs, you can go up the 5, and you'll see incredibly ornate buildings, right? Here's what God really says about buildings and churches. He starts saying in Ephesians 2 that he's actually building a building. He says, and you're all the bricks. And Jesus, he's the cornerstone, and we're all the different bricks. And he says, in him, the whole building, it's joined together. And it rises to become this holy temple in the Lord. In him, you two are being built together to become a dwelling that God himself is going to live in. Do you know where God lives in? He lives in a group of people. He's not here present in this space. This is just concrete and wood. He's not present in here any more than he is outside of here. Now, we create these things so we have a place to gather. We're not just, I guess, out baking in the sun or whatever. We have a place to gather, right? So they have a lot of importance, but they're not the place where God dwells. He dwells in his people. You actually bring church to your workplace when you go there, especially if you're there and you have, he says, where 2 or 3 are gathered, I dwell in them. Even if you have another, let's say, Christ Follower work, and you meet together, you're praying, you're thinking about what are ways we're going to bless people at work. How are we going to share? How are we going to bring a little bit of the kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven? So you're bringing church where you go. And so that's what he said. God wants to dwell in us. But we need unity to do that, right? All the pieces got to work together or else the building doesn't stand up. As I learned while we were building our house, just knowing that each piece, the chicken wire and the stucco and the plywood all has to do its part. And he says when we all come together into that, then God can work in us and through us. So here's what that means for you. We always like to end, just make it really applicable. So I just got 2 questions that kind of push you on how to apply grace in your life, all right? So here it is. I just want to push you with these, and you can just really think about, all right, so what do I do to live this out? Because otherwise we just heard some interesting facts sitting here together, and then we go out and nothing really changes. If you want to see grace make a difference in your life, right, then we got to apply it. One of those ways is, if I want to actually share grace outside of here, that means I have to go outside of here and do this, all right? Here's my warning. If you're brand new to church, then you're off scot-free. You can just hang out and kind of look in on everybody else. I'm going to speak to people that have been a Christian for a long time. I got to warn you, all right? We're in danger of becoming what some people like to call a holy huddle, all right? Holy huddle, the Christian bubble. And it feels good in the Christian bubble. It's warm and safe and easier because everybody kind of speaks my language and thinks like me, and it feels awesome. The problem is grace will just stop right there. So we have to get out of the Christian bubble, out of the holy huddle, out of the church. Now, you have to use wisdom as you do that, but we're meant to incarnate. Actually, did you know part of the incredible power of God sending Jesus wasn't just the cross. It's that God said, I'm not just going to help you from a distance. I'm going to incarnate and live among you. So then on Christmas, he's born as a human being, right? It actually lives among us as a real person. He's modeling for us. We're meant to go out and live among people as a real person, not just hiding in sort of a holy huddle. People ask me sometimes, like, Carl, if Jesus was like alive today, and let's say he lived in OB, and let's be honest, why wouldn't he? Of course he'd want to live around here. It's paradise. It's the close to heaven you can get. No, but so if you want to live around here, they're like, wouldn't it be cool? Like, would he hang out in New Break OB? And I mean, I hope he would come visit at least a little bit, because you'd much rather hear from him. But honestly, if he were in OB, I think he'd spend most of his time down at the seawall, where I think he'd hang out. And a lot on Newport. I think he'd go up to the wealthy homes in Sunset Cliffs And then he'd go down onto the pier and the seawall, and he'd go into all the businesses and bars and all the kind of see all the artists, because he spent very little time in the temple, you'll see if you read the Gospels, and more of his time just incarnating, living among people. And so we're meant to do that. I just want you to know, I'm usually telling you stories of when I mess up and get it wrong, but once in a while, I just want you to know that I'm trying to really model this stuff for you. So I just want you to know I have the extra challenge. You don't have to feel bad for me, but I have the extra challenge. As a pastor, it's really easy to stay in the holy huddle because you guys are awesome. And I wish I had more time to hang out with more of you. So I have to work extra hard and be extra intentional, because when I go to work, I'm not going to work with a bunch of people that don't know Jesus. So I have to work extra hard to build friendships outside of this. And I just wanted you to know that I do, that is a high value for me. And so I am trying to work on those because, again, we're meant to be incarnational. Last story real quick. I had several years ago, good friend, I have a heart for him. Man, doesn't really know Jesus, so just had a big heart for him. He was having a bachelor party, really wanted me to come. And he's respectful, guys. Like, just wanting to know, Carter's going to be some kind of crazy stuff happening there that you're probably not used to. But, I'd love for you to come anyway. It would mean a lot to me. And I was really wrestling, honestly, because it's usually the stuff. I'm like, yeah, I try not to put myself in some of those situations, but I know it would mean a lot to him. And so it's really kind of, thought and prayed through it and talked with my wife through it and stuff. And I said, no, you know what? I really feel like God wants me to be incarnational. This is something he'll, kind of remember the rest of his life, because, for his wedding. And so I went and hung out, tried to have some conversation with him and a bunch of his buddies and stuff. And then when things got really crazy, I just kind of subtly excused myself, out of the room and just went and found a spot to hang alone or whatever for some pieces of it. But I tried to be around when I could. And I didn't know. I'm like, all right, God. I hope that, I'm going to be honest, I didn't know if that was the right choice. I kind of doubted it the whole time. But on the drive home is the best spiritual conversation I've ever had with my buddy. He was just asking me all about just kind of God and church and life. I'm like, thank you, God, for helping me to just incarnate there. And we've had several conversations since. It was getting closer, so I know it means a ton to him that I didn't hide from that world and my bubble, that I went into it. All right. Now, again, listen, you got to use wisdom in it. Use wisdom, all right? Don't say that I told you. Pastor told me I can go do anything I want. Use some wisdom in it, all right? That's what I tried to do. But we got to go where the people are. If grace is ever going to get outside of here. So what's that look like for you, right? How can you incarnate? How can you really say, this is where I go to school or work or live? So what can I do? One thing we love to do, we're always pushing the idea of eating together with people, inviting them over. We believe it so much, we give out free bottles of barbecue sauce all of May, just trying to get in your hand and say, go invite some people over, not just your usual. Please keep hanging out with your usual huddle as well, but invite some people kind of outside of your Christian circle and just hang out, and no agenda, all right? No agenda, just to hang out and eat and build relationship. There's still a few bottles left. If you want some holy barbecue sauce, and you can invite people over to do that, right? Because we just want to incarnate. And really it's to do this. This is the last question, is just where are you going to go bring the peace of God, right? How do we just bring kind of that, a piece of God? That's like bringing thy kingdom come, right? I want them to get a taste of the kingdom so that they want more. Our life's meant to be like a really good movie trailer, all right? Really go where you watch, that's really good. I really want to see the rest of it, because it's not the whole thing, right? And so you live as this really good movie trailer for heaven, because they get this taste of it. So how do we bring that? How do we be bringers of peace, where there's disunity? And just know that we're doing that collectively as a church. We're building lots of relationships, lots of places. One of the most divisive issues everywhere in Ocean Beach is what to do about homeless and transients and travelers. And so we've tried to be really careful to not sort of just land on a side, but try to be someone that brings unity, because you got business owners, residents, churches, and everybody's kind of all mad at each other. So I just wanted you to know, we've had the opportunity during the week, a couple of times this year already, that all of those different groups have come together in this room and we talk together in unity. What are some things that we can do to bring actual real healing, not just try to push the problem away, but actually, help people get on their feet and do some stuff. So some really cool ideas have come out of it. So you'll hear some of those in the coming weeks, but I just wanted you to know that in a place where there's a lot of disunity, we're trying to help bring peace and unity. So what's your part in that, right? What does that look like where you're at? I just want to close with these words. Apostle Paul, I'm going to cheat a little because they're not in Ephesians, but that's all right. He writes about unity and grace in all of his letters. It's a little bit out of Philippians. I think it's verse 5, actually, but powerful. And I thought, let's just read these out loud just to close, because as you speak the word of God, sometimes it helps him be able to even speak it into you even more. So let's do that. Make it as clear as you can to all you meet that you're on their side, working with them and not against them. That's grace in action, all right? Let's pray together.